get for an extra fee. And if you haven't already contracted for that, I would encourage you highly to do that. There's an email at the bottom of the screen that you can contact to learn more details about the market-driven support. Now let's look at what's new in 12.2 to distinguish it from 12.1. And basically what we're doing there is continuing to innovate with a focus on three key investment themes: modern user experience, functional innovation, and leveraging technology. Let's look a little bit at each of those themes. The modern user experience has been concentrated primarily in the area of enterprise command centers, the information-driven navigation dashboards that we now provide for most of the eBusiness Suite products, as well as we've been focusing on providing more and enhanced HTML UIs, alternatives to some of the older Forms interfaces. With respect to the enterprise command centers, if you haven't seen them yet, as you can see from the screenshots on the right, they're basically these kind of BI-style dashboards that you can set as the home page for most of the eBusiness Suite products, so that when your users start their sort of eBusiness Suite day, instead of looking at a kind of blind query screen, they are invited in to look at, the current KPIs, charts and graphs related to their product. And as well, they're able to use enterprise-style search and faceted search to quickly narrow in on the set of transactions that most need their attention. And once having discovered those, they're able to quickly segue to the corresponding transaction screen or even a pop-up window to take the appropriate action. By this time, the enterprise command centers have been coming out since 2018. We now have 36 of them corresponding to the products that I show on the slide here. And each one of those command centers contains one or more function-specific, or role-specific, I should say, dashboard. But we're constantly coming out with new ones of these, so you want to keep current. This is current as of September 2024. With respect to the HTML UIs, you're not required to uptake them, but we are sort of chipping away at providing HTML alternatives to some of the older Forms workbenches. Here we're basically responding to requests from our users, our customers, I should say, to provide, HTMLs for those users who prefer the more flexible, modern user interface of HTML. And you can see the current set of those that we provide on the left, and we're constantly, as I said, adding new ones to this list. In terms of the new and enhanced business functionality that's in 12.2, there what we're responding to primarily are the features and enhancements that customers most ask for. And the way that customers share their inputs, well, first off, primarily they're doing it through the so-called eBusiness Suite Ideas portal. There's a link to that at the bottom of the slide. But they're also doing that through service requests, which suggest enhancements, as well as just the straight up customer interactions that we have at the various user group meetings and other meetings. And we basically take the most highly requested customer inputs or customer enhancement requests, and those become part of our product roadmaps. And you can see here that since the start of 12.2, we've been able to build out significant enhancements in all the product areas. I wouldn't expect you to really read this. I'm really just trying to impress on you that there's been substantial development in every one of the product families. We'll talk a little later about how you can drill in on what the new features are for each of the product areas. The other thing about 12.2 that's distinctive over 12.1 is that it's making more use of the underlying technology. So for example, we know that, the signature feature of 12.2 is online patching for reduced downtime. And we'll be talking about this technology advance a little later in the session, so I won't dwell on it here. But you may not be aware that we also added, as of 12.2.11, something that we call modernization of the EBS 12.2 database architecture, where we're making better use of latest database standards. I'll also be talking about this a little later, so moving ahead here. We've also, in this 12.2 release, certified with Autonomous Database. It's currently available, limited availability for autonomous dedicated. And if you think you might be a candidate for this, I would recommend that you inquire about it by contacting at the email address that I have on the bottom of the screen there. Something new as of 12.2.14 or soon after is the ability for you to get tighter integration with your custom Apex pages. Now, prior to 12.2.14, we did provide a white paper that explained how you would extend eBusiness Suite with your custom Apex code, but we've actually, in response to customer requests, provided still tighter integration. You now have the ability to register a custom Apex page as an eBusiness Suite function, and thereby making it possible for you to navigate, for your users to navigate seamlessly from the eBusiness Suite UIs to your custom Apex UIs. You even can integrate your Apex workspace schema with eBusiness Suites so that you can additions enable it. In other words, have it work with online patching. And here's the look and feel that you're able to achieve. You're basically, able to drop your Apex custom screen within an OA framework template frame, such that you're inheriting that kind of global header bar with its global menu, the home icon, the switch user icon, etc. So for your end users, your custom Apex UI looks very much like a delivered eBusiness Suite UI. Another technology that we've integrated as of 12.2.14 is Oracle Guided Learning. This is basically a user assistance technology that you can use to provide custom guides, smart tips, messages, etc., that are very specific to your own internal processes and policies. And you can connect those up with the Oracle eBusiness Suite HTML screens. We're not going to be providing content. There's not going to be any pre-built content, but you can build it yourself or work with a third party to provide that content. So hopefully now you get the flavor of some of the 12.2 advances that we've made in the three focus areas of user experience, functional innovation, and technology. You're now aware of the long-term Premier support extending out through at least 2035. And this is very much, distinguishing 12.2 from 12.1, where the Premier support did end at the end of 2021. And you're now, if you're running 12.1, in sustaining support in order to continue getting security updates or any patches for new issues. You'll need to have enrolled in the market-driven support program. That's going to be available through the end of 2024 and again in 2025 for an additional fee. Not clear yet what's going to happen after that. So the point is, if you're on 12.1 of eBusiness Suite and you're planning to stay with eBusiness Suite, you need to get started on your upgrade project now. Let's talk about some of the details of how you're going to undertake your project. And in particular, let's talk about how you accomplish the eBusiness Suite upgrade along with some of what I'm calling related projects. So of course, we're going to talk about going from EBS 12.1.3 to 12.2, but there's an additional project that you may need to undertake along with that, which is to upgrade your database from one of the, either 11G, 12C, or 19C up to database 23 AI. And then there's an optional but value-added project that you could undertake, which is to move your eBusiness Suite deployment from your current on-premises platform to Oracle's cloud infrastructure platform. So let's look at what it takes to get to the target database version. So currently, as of October 2024, the latest certified version of the Oracle database is Oracle Database 19C, certified both for 12.1.3 and 12.2 of eBusiness Suite. Now, we know that some customers may still be running Database 11.204 or 12.102. And as you can see, those are not only out of Premier support, but they're out of extended support as well, and have moved into a sort of a phase that you need to contract for with the customer success services team called upgrade support. That's only going to extend through calendar year 2025. So if you happen to be on one of those older database versions, it's really a high priority for you to upgrade to Database 19C. Database 19C has full Premier support through April 30th, 2026, And after that, there will be a year of extended support from May 1st, 2026 through April 30th, 2027. You can read all about the support timelines around the various database versions in the MOST note that I mentioned down at the bottom of the screen. That's the release schedule of current database releases. That's a note that's updated fairly frequently by the database team, so you'll want to stay current with that. Now, the next long-term support release for the database is Database 23AI. It is already available on the OCI database services and Oracle Exadata platforms. It's expected to become available on the other platforms by the end of calendar year 2024. eBusiness Suite is currently doing certification testing for eBusiness Suite 12.2.7 and higher with Database 23AI. The testing is in an advanced stage, so we would expect to be able to announce those certifications soon after, within a few months of the time that Database 23AI becomes available on the various platforms. Just be aware that the certifications on database services and OCI versus on-premises use may come at different times. Now, once eBusiness Suite is certified with Database 23AI for the platform that you're running, you'll want to plan to upgrade to 23AI before the 19C extended support period ends, which, as I noted on the previous slide, will occur in October 30th, 2027. That's, by the way, going to be paid extended support. Without paid extended support, you'll have access to patching until April 30th, 2026. I'd like to emphasize that since you can't upgrade directly from Database 12.102 to 23AI, if you continue to be on 12.102, you should upgrade without delay. And to help you with that, I'll point you at this Information Center, Oracle Database 19C with Oracle eBusiness Suite 12.2 and 12.1. This was sort of a joint enterprise, the production of this Information Center between Oracle eBusiness Suite development and support, and from all accounts is very useful to people in their database upgrade projects. Okay, so that's all I've got to say about the database move, but what about moving your eBusiness Suite from your on-premises platform to OCI? So here, I'd just like to emphasize that we've actually invested quite a bit in providing the so-called eBusiness Suite Cloud Manager that allows you to take advantage of automation that we're providing around all the various activities you'd want to undertake with eBusiness Suite on OCI. And that would include the ability to provision new eBusiness Suite environments on OCI, taking advantage of automation that we provide, as well as doing the so-called lift and shift of an existing EBS on-premises instance where you retain your existing eBusiness Suite configuration, all of your historical data, and all of your customizations, just moving those onto OCI. And once you're running eBusiness Suite on OCI, you'll be able to take advantage of the automation that we provide around the common lifecycle management utilities, common lifecycle management activities such as fast clone, backup and restore, doing deletion and addition of nodes, disaster recovery, and so on. And we can provide this automation, of course, because we know the OCI environment very well. We don't have to cater to, the wide variety of on-premises environments. We can cater to the OCI environment. I'm showing this slide just to underscore the fact that the move of eBusiness Suite to OCI can be accomplished in months rather than years. I'll let you read these little descriptions of various customers who have made the move, and what it does is summarize the business benefits they've gained, but it also explains how long their projects take. You can see that each of the projects has taken less than a year, in some cases considerably less than a year. So to summarize, the main planning considerations around moving your eBusiness Suite to OCI is that you can migrate any eBusiness Suite 12.2 or 12.1 release to OCI. You can migrate your eBusiness to OCI on either Database 19C or Database 23AI. You can perform the future EBS application technology stack update either on premises or on OCI. And again, you can migrate eBusiness Suite to OCI in months rather than years. Let's talk a bit about how you're going to accomplish these upgrades and related projects. In particular, what is your path to the target eBusiness Suite stack? So I've got that kind of arrayed left to right here. So what I'm showing is if today you're running eBusiness Suite 12.1.3 on either database 11.204 or 12.1.02, the first order of business is to get the database upgrade done such that you're running 12.1.3 of EBS on database 19C. And after that, a close second would be to complete the upgrade from eBusiness Suite 12.1.3 to eBusiness Suite 12.2. Once you're running on eBusiness Suite 12.2 and database 19C, you have some time to contemplate the move to database 23AI. As you can see, that's the final step towards the target stack. Now, you may be wondering, can you group any of these projects? And the answer to that is, of course, you can. We definitely do see customers combining these projects, combining the outages, and in so doing, they're able to take advantage of less total downtime in testing, perhaps at the cost of slightly more complex troubleshooting because they're taking on more change in any one project. But of course, you can also, proceed serially and just pursue each of these as separate projects and outages. This is basically your choice to make, and generally speaking, organizations have a way in which they prefer to proceed. What I'm showing here, for example, is that you could combine the move of your eBusiness Suite environment to the cloud with any of these other projects. For example, once you're running eBusiness Suite 12.1.3 on database 19C, you'd be in a position to move your eBusiness Suite environment to the cloud and take advantage of OCI on database services such as XSCS. Or you could combine that move to the cloud with any of the other moves, for example, the move to 12.2 or the move to database 23AI. And similarly, you could combine the upgrade of the database to 19C with the upgrade to eBusiness Suite 12.2, or you could combine the upgrade to 12.2 of eBusiness Suite with the upgrade to database 23AI, just with the proviso that you'd want to make sure you could get that database upgrade done while you still have MDS support for 12.1. So in case you're interested, there are many services that the Oracle services teams can provide to help you with any of these activities. For example, they provide a cloud lift service. They provide various services around the eBusiness Suite upgrade, including helping you to minimize your upgrade downtime or helping you to manage the Chemly retrofit or customization retrofit that you would do. They can help you with your upgrade from database 11.2 or 12.1 to 19C, and they can help you to run and maintain eBusiness Suite on OCI once you've made the move there. All right, let's talk a little bit about how you're going to scope the upgrade to 12.2. In particular, we'll talk about managing the trade-off between just sort of getting the project done and delivering value to your business. So it's fairly common for organizations to think in terms of minimizing their time, their cost, and their risk by taking on what they call a like-for-like technical upgrade, where they're only taking up required changes like the adopting online patching, which you have no choice about that, but deferring the adoption of things like the various advances in the UI and functionality and retaining existing customizations. That's certainly a feasible way forward, but we would ask you to consider combining your technical upgrade with some what we call kind of low-hanging fruit type projects, which would improve your user's overall experience. So, for example, you might consider adopting some of the HTML UI replacements for the Oracle Forms. That would simply be a matter of adding those UI screens to your user menus. Or you might even consider deploying enterprise command centers, that is taking up one or two of the enterprise command centers. And with either of those projects, increasing user productivity and satisfaction, and basically retiring some of your custom operational reports. And finally, you might consider implementing some functional enhancements, again, either as part of your technical upgrade project or a fast follow project. You could leverage the functional enhancements to support improved and maybe even new business processes, replace customizations that you've been carrying around, perhaps release over release with standard eBusiness Suite functionality. And consider that you might be able to combine the user testing that you're doing for the upgrade to validate new functionality. So really just some thoughts there about how to scope your upgrade. Now, if you want to learn more about the new features that I showed several slides back, where I showed kind of the eye chart of all the features that were added to each of the products, here I've pointed you to a session called What's New in 12.2 Beyond Online Patching. You can listen to the recording for that, download the presentation for that, and see in greater detail what's been added to 12.2 in each of the product areas. And then from there, you can actually drill down still further by consuming some of the 12.2x release announcements. I have direct links here to the written announcements, which flesh out some of the features in more detail, as well as direct links to the videos that are recorded with each of the release announcements by our general manager, Cliff Godwin, in which he shows you the new, UIs, and he walks through some demonstrations showing you the business usage of the new features. Another resource that you could use is, of course, the eBusiness Suite release content documents, which is kind of a reference style or feature list. These are organized by product family. There's a total of 16 of these product family RCDs, and each one of those is organized by product, by release, and by feature. So you can basically just go through the table of contents, and as you see feature names that are of interest to you, drill into the document and read more about them. Now, the RCDs are on MyOracle support, which means that you may need to download those to share them with your business users. To make that download a little easier, I've published a document on oracle.com that has the direct links to each of the 16 RCDs. I also have the direct links embedded in this slide. Accompanying the RCDs, we have, of course, the transfer of information training, which is, if you will, the training version of the RCD. We record these with each of the eBusiness Suite 12.2x reps. These are recorded by the product managers and development managers who designed and implemented the new features. So you can hear from them about the business value of the features. They'll show you the user flows and the setup flows. And to make those a little easier to access, I've actually published an index document. I've got the direct link down there in the lower left of the screen. That basically carries the deep links into each one of the available 12.2x TOIs. And finally, here I'm just reminding everyone that there's an Enterprise Command Center Quick Start Guide, which basically is the Enterprise Command Center swath through all of those information resources. You can access that from the vanity URL I have in the upper left. That's oracle.com/EBS-ECC. Now, you may be wondering, how long is my eBusiness Suite upgrade project likely to take? And unfortunately, I can't give you an exact estimate. I can say that in general, these projects take somewhere in the vicinity of 6, 7 months, 9 months, maybe up to a year. But your exact project time is going to depend on factors that are unique to you. And those factors will include things like the size of your existing EBS functional footprint and any uptake of new 12.2 functionality that you choose to do, because of course you'll need to test the modules and the business flows that you have implemented. You'll also need to test any of your customizations and integrations, and just be aware that those will need to comply with some new 12.2 development standards. Also, to the degree that you combine your eBusiness Suite upgrade with other IT changes, that will obviously have an impact on your overall project time. So if you choose to combine your EBS upgrade with a database upgrade or an instance consolidation or a platform migration, that will have an impact. And then finally, there's that kind of ineffable but factor that we all know is there, which is your project team ready for the upgrade project? Do you have functional testers lined up? Is your IT team ready to adapt to the 12.2 technology changes, namely online patching and WebLogic server? And this is as good a time as any to start to dig into those architecture changes. We'll look first at the online patching architecture and the impacts on your organization. Indeed, the online patching does give the upgrade kind of its flavor, if you will. So up until now, you've accomplished patching in a single sort of downtime, but going forward, what's going to happen is you're actually going to undertake an online patching cycle, a 5-phase cycle. 4 of those phases occur while users remain online and completely active and unaware of the fact that patching operations are going on. So for example, there'll be a prepare phase where you're making copies of the production application code and creating a new patch edition in the database. There'll be an apply phase where you're applying one or more patches to the new patch edition. There'll be a finalize phase where there's going to be some optimization going on, some compilation of invalid objects to optimize for the shortest possible cutover time. You can hang out in that finalize phase for as long as you like, waiting for a good downtime window. And then it's only during that cutover period where users do need to get offline and will be restarting the application on the patch edition. That period of time will be something on the order of 20 or 30 minutes, however long it takes to restart your applications on the application tier. Once users are back online, there'll be some cleanup going on in the background, but again, users will be completely unaware of that. With 12.2, we introduce a new patching tool called ADOP that orchestrates the progress through those 5 phases. So not surprisingly, online patching does rely on a dual file system that's new with 12.2. So you'll be installing file system 1 and file systems 2. And at any point in time during the patching cycle, one of those file systems will be designated as the run file system that's in use by online users, while the other file system, and here we're showing file system 2, is the patch file system that's in use by the patching tools. It's during the cutover period that the logical designations are switched. And when you come live again, the newly patched FS2 is named as the run file system, and what was formerly the run file system is now the patch file system, kind of waiting on standby until the next patching cycle. There's actually a third file system known as the non-addition file system that is for non-code files, files that never are patched. Now, correspondingly, in the database, we have sort of the logical equivalent of the dual file system that we're implementing using an 11GR2 feature called addition-based redefinition. What this allows us to do is to host multiple different editions of the same code objects in a single database. So we can have a patch edition of those code objects that's being attached to by the patching utilities, while we have a run edition that business users are using. During the cutover period, the patch edition is promoted to become the new run edition, and the run edition is demoted or retired, if you will, to become an old edition that nobody's using anymore. So here's how this all comes together. You can see the 2 file systems, and you can see that the run file system is attached to the run edition in the database, the patch file system to the patch edition in the database. You can see that there's a non-addition file system in addition. So let's take a little kind of walk through the patching cycle here. We'll start with the prepare phase, which, as you can see, involves synchronizing the patch file system so that it becomes an exact copy of the run file system and instantiating a new patch edition in the database. You can see at this point we've downloaded an eBusiness Suite patch to the patch top on the non-addition file system. And now as we go to the apply phase, we're going to be applying changes, patch changes. In this case, there's some changes to the AppleTop on the patch file system, and perhaps some changes to some code objects running in the patch edition of the database. Here we are in the finalized phase. Not much to show here because there's just some computations going on in the background. And then in the cutover phase, this is when the switch is going to occur to where when you come up live again, what was the patch file system becomes the run file system. What was the patch edition in the database becomes the run edition. And basically, this is what you would see, in the finalized phase or after you come up again at the end of the finalized phase. So that's pretty straightforward, right? Online patching makes copies of the code. Then we switch to the newly, updated code. What we're not doing, however, with online patching is making copies of the transactional data. We retain a single copy of transactional data in the database. The data storage objects, such as tables and indexes, are deemed as non-additioned. But what we do use are database additioning views that are laid over the physical tables, like logical views are laid over the underlying physical tables so that we're showing like a run view to the run edition and a patch view to the patch edition. And then during patching, we use cross-edition triggers to propagate data updates from the run edition to the patch edition. So let me show you what I mean by all of this. So let's imagine that you have the table on the left, which we're calling the service request table, and here's the definition of it, a very simple table. ID, filed by, and status are the only columns. And let's say that the patch action is going to change the data type of the status column from number to varchar 230. Now, we can't do a direct manipulation of that data type because there's running code running against this table. So instead, what we do is we add an additional column, a replacement column, shown here as status #1, and we give it the new data type, that's varchar 230. And you'll note that the run edition view is looking at that new, the run edition view is still looking at status as data type number, while the patch edition view is looking at status as the kind of go forward data type varchar 230. Now, what we also need to do is map the data in the existing table rows from the run to the patch edition. So the cross edition trigger is going to change 11 to open, 30 to info requested, 90 to fixed. In other words, remap the numeric to the character mode. And then you'll note there the run edition view is showing status 11, 30, 90, while the patch edition view is already showing the new character values. And indeed, if somebody adds a new row during the course of the patching operation, the cross edition trigger will execute and again remap from status column to the status #1 column. Post cutover, when we come live again, you'll note that the run edition view has changed. It's now attached to what had been the patch edition view, and what was formerly the run edition view is now an old edition view that's no longer in use by any of the code. And so going forward, you'll see that, all the code is now interacting with a status column that's the character column. So that in, a very short period of time is my explanation of how online patching architecture works. It's important to note that all eBusiness Suite patches for release 12.2 are online patches. The online patching of code is enabled by the new dual file system and by database editioning. The online patching of transactional tables is enabled by database editioning views and cross-edition triggers. We went through this all very quickly, and I would suggest if you'd like to drill in a little deeper, you might look at the online patching FAQ on Oracle support. I've got the doc noted at the bottom of the screen. Now, you can imagine that those changes to online patching architecture do have impacts on your custom code. You will need to ensure that your custom code complies with the new online patching architecture. Fortunately, there are two distinct standards compliance levels that you can choose from. The one on the left, the minimal compliance, is just a required minimal set of standards that you must meet in order for your custom code to run correctly in a 12.2 environment, while a fuller standards compliance level is what you would choose to meet if you want to minimize your online patching time. That's the level at which the e-business suite patches are targeted to. The decision between, these compliance levels is completely up to you based on the importance of minimizing your patching downtime. So if you choose to make your custom code fully compliant with those standards and to build out patches that are like the delivered e-business suite patches, then you can apply your custom code patches to the patch edition during the standard apply phase, perhaps alongside of your e-business suite patches. And then the cutover period will be completely unaffected by the fact that you've added your own custom code patches. If by contrast, you're going with the minimally compliant model, you're very likely to apply your custom code during, again, a standard e-business suite patching cycle. During the cutover period, you would do the setting that extends the cutover. And during that extended cutover time, you would apply your new custom code to the run edition, thereby prolonging the cutover period. Now, the main thing you need to do to achieve consistency, that is minimal compliance with the new development standards, is to ensure that all of your code accesses the data model via the app synonym. This has been a standard actually for a long time, but it's really critical to the online patching environment. And that's because the app synonym will point your code to the correct editioning view. In other words, you don't want your code to mistakenly access the physical model and mistakenly access a column that is now obsolete. So you'll always want it to go through the app synonym and by, in relation to that, through the correct editioning view. We do provide a package of reports that you can run against your custom code to check for any violations of coding standards, of 12.2 coding standards. These are the exact same reports that we run in-house at Oracle. The first three of those reports, called the upgrade readiness reports, are associated with the upgrade project exclusively. You'll need to run these and follow what the reports tell you as part of your upgrade project. You'll also need to run the standards compliance reports. It's those final two, the standards compliance reports, that you'll also be running post-upgrade in order, ahead of your applying any new custom code to your environment. And just be aware that you'll want to get started preparing your custom code to comply with these standards. You can do that really starting from today. You would download the reports for your current release, be it 11.5.10, 12.0, or 12.1. You would run the reports on your current release. It would come back with, kind of prolific amount of information that explains exactly what you need to do to fix any instances of non-compliance. You could iterate on that is apply, the fixes in test environments and then run again until you are sure that you're compliant. Once you've achieved compliance, you can actually deploy that remediated code in your production environment because all of the recommended fixes are backward compatible to the pre-12.2 releases. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the online patching architecture and its impacts. Let's take a look at the database architecture modernization and its impacts. So starting from 12.2.11, we provided the ability for people to do the so-called e-business suite system schema migration, which is part of, adopting latest database standards, public APIs and features, and also setting you up to where you can have better separation of duties between your Oracle Database Administrator and your e-business suite system administrator. In other words, the e-business suite system administrator doesn't need all of the privileges that a database administrator needs, and this project will help you achieve that outcome. Also, by taking on this system schema migration, you'll have easier and cleaner adoption of latest database security features such as unified auditing, database vault, audit vault, and so on. And then we'll actually be able to do faster database certifications with eBusiness Suite 12.2 when new database releases come out. Now, what's involved with this change to the new modern database architecture? Well, it's enabled by something that we call the eBusiness Suite System Schema Migration. So basically, historically, we had been installing some of our application objects in the Oracle databases sys and system schemas. In particular, we were installing user-defined types there and private admin APIs. But starting with EBS 12.2.11, we provided a solution that will allow you to adopt a new eBusiness Suite system schema and eliminate the reliance on installing eBusiness Suite objects in either the sys or system schemas. So all of the objects that we had previously installed in sys or system are migrated to EBS only schemas, and that would include the new EBS system schema, the app schema, the apps NE schemas. The distribution of the objects across those are dependent on, the exact object type and function. And once those eBusiness Suite objects are migrated, all eBusiness Suite system administration activities, including the ADOP patching utility and AD admin utility, are performed out of the eBusiness Suite system schema. You can read more about this change in the FAQ that I've noted down at the bottom of the screen. That's Doc 2758999.1. So what I've got here is kind of the before and after picture. In other words, the schema architecture in the EBS 12.1.3 database is on the left. And you see there that we have some eBusiness Suite objects in both sys and system. But after you've completed the eBusiness Suite system migration, which is something that you can do as part of your eBusiness Suite 12.2x upgrade, you'll see that those objects are no longer in sys and system. They have instead been moved into the new eBusiness Suite system schema and into the existing, 12.2 schemas, apps and apps NE. Now, I'm not going to walk through each of the steps here. Those are actually very well documented in the note that I've noted at the bottom, the Oracle eBusiness Suite Release 12.2 System Schema Migration, Doc 2755875.1. But I'd just like to emphasize that you can and should complete the eBusiness Suite system schema migration as part of your eBusiness Suite 12.2 upgrade. Now let's look at some of the other customization impacts of the upgrade. So as with any major upgrade project, you can expect to have to undertake a customization project, which includes, of course, cataloging all of your existing customizations, determining which of those you're going to upgrade and which of those you're going to retire. We would urge you to simplify your 12.2 project by retiring customizations that you've identified as no longer being needed. A lot of times customers find a substantial number of, for example, old reports that nobody can even remember what they were used for. By retiring those, you obviate the need to have to bring them into compliance with the 12.2 coding standards. You might also seriously consider replacing some of your customizations with standard 12.2 functionality. And then definitely what you want to do is potentially reach out to various third parties, be they your system integrators or the Oracle services teams that can help you with the whole project of analyzing and managing your custom code, what we call ChemLIs. There are some other reports that your customization developers will want to know about. In particular, on MyOracle Support, we have something called the EBS Data Model Comparison Report. And what it shows you are the changes in the EBS data object definitions between the 12.1 and each of the 12.2.x releases. These are the changes in the delivered code. It doesn't have the ability to introspect your code. And correspondingly, there's a file comparison report that lists the eBusiness Suite file additions, file changes, and file removals between 12.1 and each of the 12.2x releases. Finally, there have been some UI standards changes for the HTML or OA framework-based pages as part of 12.2. And if you have custom HTML pages, you'll want your customization developers to have access to that set of instructions. Now, a lot of times we're asked, what happens to forms personalizations and any custom library business logic that you have during the 12.2 upgrade? Well, it turns out that the pre-existing forms personalizations are stored in metadata that should persist after the upgrade. So there shouldn't be anything that changes about that metadata. However, it is the case that if the release 12.2 version of the form that you've personalized is significantly changed in that, maybe some new fields have been added, fields have been dropped, field order has been changed, the personalizations might not work exactly as you expected. So you'll want to look at those forms closely, see if, and make any adjustments to them if there's anything about them that's not working as you expect. You do that post upgrade. You'd also want to check that any business logic that you use in your custom library also still works as expected. Another consideration would be, given that we are now providing more core UIs as replacements or alternatives to the existing forms, you might consider replacing a heavily personalized form with one of the with the HTML alternative to it. And if it turns out that, that also needs personalization, you would want to, check on that. You can personalize the HTML UIs using a redesigned OA Framework Admin Personalization Workbench, which is actually pretty cool. It has, WYSIWYG UI modifications that will allow you to reorder or hide and show or rename the various UI components. It will also, by the way, withstand future upgrades to the base page definition. All right, in terms of additional administration impacts, of course, your DBAs are going to have to come up to speed on the new ADOP patching utility, which is basically kind of a cover for the old AD patch utility. However, it does, obviously need to step you through the 5 patching phases, and it has various other capabilities that I've listed on the left there. Basically, your administrators are going to want to look at the Oracle eBusiness Suite maintenance guide and get some practice with the new ADOP utility. The other thing that happens during the upgrade is that we're replacing the application tier, which previously at the 12.1 level was running 10G of the Fusion middleware with the OC4J application server. At the 12.2 level, that's replaced with Fusion middleware 11G and the WebLogic server. So what happens here is that your administrators who may be very used to using EBS autoconfig for configuration will at the 12.2 level need to learn how to use the native WebLogic server capabilities along with Fusion middleware admin tools and EBS autoconfig to do any new 12.2 configurations. So you can't really assume that prior knowledge of any of those admin tools individually is sufficient. Basically, your administrators are going to want to read the white paper that I've cited below to understand how to use all of them together. What about upgrade environment impacts? A lot of times we're asked, do I need to acquire new hardware capacity in as much as the online patching is, in fact, consuming some resource? And it's true, it's running alongside of your critical business operations, but it turns out that it's not actually consuming a lot of resource, something on the order of maybe 5% of your capacity. And you can throttle the system resources that are consumed, that is, increase or decrease the number of ADOP workers that you apply to any given patching cycle. It's really only the case that if your 12.1 production environment is today fully utilizing your CPU and memory, then you might need additional hardware resources. In general, we don't see that people do, but this is something you'll obviously need to test for. You'll want to consult the upgrade guide for advice on how to plan for adequate compute capacity. I've got a little snippet there of the type of sizing guidance that is given. You want to validate that you've adequately sized through testing with your own data and workloads. In terms of planning around adequate storage, that's a little more straightforward. The upgrade guide, for example, will instruct you to double the size of your system table space and your seed table space. And of course, you're now going to need 2 file systems instead of 1 to accommodate the dual file system needed for online patching. In terms of preparing for the upgrade process, your source here is going to be the Oracle eBusiness Suite Upgrade Guide, release 12.0 and 12.1 to 12.2. It basically details all the steps of the upgrade. It is kept completely up to date. What I've got here is just a diagram of the major milestones, of which there are 7. The first 2 milestones on the left there can be accomplished before the main upgrade downtime. That is, in step 1, you'll need to prepare your database by bringing it up to date with latest database patches that you'll identify using the eBusiness Suite Technology Code Level Checker, otherwise known as ETCC. You then could do the install of the 12.2.0 file system using Rapid Install. That's going to lay down the new 12.2.0 eBusiness Suite code and tech stack. You can actually do that alongside of your running 12.1 system. And then, of course, when you actually go to run the 12.2.0 main upgrade driver in step 3, that's when all of your users will need to be off the system. And this will be, so to speak, the beginning of your main upgrade downtime, your upgrade weekend or whatever. So once you've upgraded to 12.2.0, bringing your database up to the 12.2.0 code level, step 4 is something completely unique to the 12.2 upgrade in that you'll be running scripts that will enable a database editioning and creating the editioning views over your physical tables. And once you've got online patching running, you'll be using it, from there on. Step 5 is basically about upgrading to your target eBusiness Suite code level, which will involve applying the latest 80TXK RUPs such that you get the latest patching technology. You'll also then apply your target eBusiness Suite 12.2x RUPs. This is where you'll also apply your eBusiness Suite system schema ready custom database code and run the completion patch. There will have been various other steps before related to the schema migration, apply localizations, and so forth. Then at step 6 and 7, you can actually have what we call conditional uptime. That is, you can have the system brought online so that your testers can begin testing while others on the IT team continue on to deploy the various extensions and configure your system to full production capacity. Again, all of this is detailed in the upgrade guide. The main question that is usually brought to us is, what code level of eBusiness Suite should I plan to upgrade to? And we strongly advise upgrade customers to always target the latest available eBusiness Suite release, currently 12.2.14. In other words, you shouldn't have a policy where you say, hey, I think I'll upgrade to 12.2.13 or 12.2.12 on the theory that that's safer. By the time you've completed your upgrade, probably another year will have gone by and a new release of EBS will have come out. So you don't really kind of want to be down revved by several years. In fact, if a new 12.2x release comes out after your upgrade project is underway, you should evaluate whether to advance your release target to that later release. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't advance if you're already well along with your project. It's something that you would want to evaluate, though. There are significant benefits of going live on the very latest 12.2x release, not the least of which is that you are getting the latest error corrections and performance enhancements, as well as the opportunity to uptake the latest functionality, and all of that will have been tested together by eBusiness Suite development. Something else to think about is that if you were to, for example, apply a down-rev version of eBusiness Suite 12.2, let's say you apply 12.2.12 and yet 12.2.14 or even 12.2.15 is out, what you risk there is that you will have applied patches to 12.1.3 that won't have made it into your earlier 12.2x release. And so in a sense, you'll regress on those and you'll have to take some time and effort to identify and apply the 12.2 equivalents to 12.1.3 patches that you've already applied. Of course, you're going to prepare a detailed upgrade plan that's going to be based on the Oracle upgrade documentation, which includes, of course, the upgrade guide combined with the eBusiness Suite release notes. You'll be refining that plan with your own task and timing details as you iterate through your test upgrades. And naturally, you would follow that run book that you've refined and stabilized during your test upgrades when you do your production upgrade. It's really important that if you encounter any obstacles as you move through the upgrade steps, that you not drop steps or improvise in any way. If you come up against any obstacle, you'd want to seek Oracle support's help. And in that connection, I can recommend, or now actually advise, that probably Oracle support will ask you to run the Oracle eBusiness Suite Upgrade Analyzer, which is a self-service health check script that Oracle support provides. It's going to look at all of the data related to your upgrade in your environment, analyze your configurations, your settings, etc., identify any steps that you might have missed. But just be prepared that when you interact with support, they'll probably ask you to run this first. All right, well, we're almost at the finish line here. Let's talk a little bit about how you test and optimize the upgrade process. So, of course, as with any major upgrade to, a new release level, you'd want to plan around doing full functional testing to validate all your business flows, full load and volume testing, simulating your peak load, and of course, upgrade cutover testing to make sure that you can complete the upgrade in the cutover window that your business has given you. Especially critical to the 12.2 upgrade is that you test all of your own customizations and integrations to ensure that they're 12.2 online patching compatible. And then some customers have also cited that it was useful when they first came up on the upgraded system that they tested the online patching cycle using kind of an empty patch just to make sure that they have connectivity to all of the nodes. There's actually a Moss note that explains how to do it that I've cited on this screen here. A lot of times we're asked about automated testing tools. What tools should we use? And just to be clear, we don't promote any particular automated testing tool. I can share that internally, the EBS QA team does use a combination of the Oracle Application Testing Suite, otherwise known as OATS, for our forms flows, and then we use Selenium for other flows. Now, OATS is an Oracle tool that's compatible with Oracle's applications. In particular, it lets you do Forms UI testing that is completely independent of field sequence. If you'd like to learn more about OATS, I've given the link there to the Oracle Application Testing Suite Statement of Direction. Selenium, as you know, is a free open source tool with a very large community of users, and you can use that for your web UI testing, i.e. for your EBS HTML UIs. The $64,000 question, how long will my upgrade downtime take? And again, the answer to this question, as before, will depend on factors unique to your situation. Things like the number of modules and functionality that you have in use and their data distribution. That all has an impact on how long it takes to run an upgrade script or job to run, which is going to vary by customer. The number and complexity of your customizations and integrations, which are going to need to use downtime to deploy and test. Any other IT changes that you're combining with the EBS upgrade, that's obviously going to chew up some of your downtime, things like database upgrade or instance consolidation and so on. And then, of course, straightforwardly, the data volume that you have, upgrade scripts and jobs that change the data model can run long when your data volumes are especially high. And of course, your hardware that you're using. Do you have enough CPU? Do you have enough memory? Do you have enough I/O resources? The most important factor above all is the amount of upgrade practice that you've done and the amount of optimization and tuning that you've done. And in this connection, we generally recommend that you get started on the testing your upgrade downtime, that is your performance testing, early on in the project. Like, don't defer the testing of the main upgrade driver and the length of time it's going to take until the end, but basically be doing that alongside of your functional testing. You can use diagnostics that are available on Moss to identify long-running jobs and sequels, and check Moss for known, current upgrade performance issues and solutions. The number of those, I'm sure, has gone down substantially in the years since we rolled out 12.2. You'd also want to look at the duration of tasks that you're doing before and after the main upgrade driver runs, looking at manual tasks that you can script or tasks that you can perform in parallel, or even tasks that you can remove altogether from the upgrade downtime. For example, if you're going to re-platform your database, you could do that in another downtime. Here I've collected some tips and best practices from customers. People stress the importance of practicing the upgrade on a system that's comparable to your production system, i.e. same architecture, CPU, I/O, memory and data volume characteristics. You'll want to be practicing with the recent clone of production. Some customers find it useful to mimic the conditions of their planned production upgrade in the sense of testing on the same day of the week, same time of day, and with the exact same project team members that they plan to use for their production upgrade. And then, of course, you're going to make sure that you apply all the latest upgrade patches to take advantage of latest performance optimizations. You'd read about those in the Oracle eBusiness Suite release notes. I've cited that documentation below. Finally, there's no substitute for practicing the upgrade, practicing it as many times that are needed until you can ensure that the process is predictable and that it will fit within the downtime window you've been given by your business with no outstanding issue. In general, the performance team suggests that people should plan on something like 5 practice iterations. And they note that, you shouldn't get discouraged if during your initial iteration, the downtime seems to take longer than you might expect. That's basically going to go down substantially via your testing. I've listed on this screen the various white papers and other notes that's published by the eBusiness Suite performance team that'll help you understand how to optimize your downtime, how to shorten it. So thank you very much for sticking with this and going through the 10 key considerations. If some of these issues are still a little fuzzy in your mind, rest assured you can download this presentation, and there are references associated with most of the screens here, most of the considerations I've listed here. Also, you'd want to keep current with the eBusiness Suite technology blog, which is going to give you any news of, for example, new certifications, etc. And finally, we do publish general eBusiness Suite news and information on the homepage, www.oracle.com/EBS. And in fact, we recently merged in what had been a separate page, the oracle.com/EBS resources page. When you use that vanity URL today, that'll actually take you back to the homepage. We've integrated those 2 pages together just for ease of use. So with that, I'm going to sign off for now and wish you the best of luck with your upgrade. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me at ann.carlson@oracle.com.